I'm going to show you things that you may have seen in my previous lectures also. Like this problem we have done, I think, in the past. It's the simplest possible transformer problem that you can think of. You are given primary and secondary voltages and number of turns in the primary. Calculate the number of turns in the secondary. Very simple calculation. Okay. In job interviews, in fact, if you tell the interviewer that you have been taught transformers, this is the kind of question he would ask you right away. One thing you should always remember, the turns ratio A is always NP divided by NS, not NS divided by NP. That is the convention most books follow as far as I have seen. So unless you see something very different, assume this. Okay, this also we have done in the past. What we did was connected a 240 ohm load on the secondary and we did power calculation. This is something that we have done already in one of the previous lectures. This is the problem. How to calculate voltage, current, and power on both sides. Okay, so you can read through it once again when you get the document. Impedance transformation, I have gone through it already. I've told you that a load ZL on the secondary side looks like A square ZL as the input impedance on the primary side. Okay. Now, slightly different variation of the problem. For the transformer that was considered in problem 1 and 2, calculate the input impedance, assuming that load is 240 ohm. And you have just a minute. Yeah, that's right. So A square RL is the answer. The rest is all calculations. I had some fun here. Without calculator, I wanted to do this calculation. So I did it this way. But you don't have to do it this way. The answer is simple. Okay. A square RL is the answer. As simple as that. More interesting is the real world where the load is hardly going to be resistive. It is always a complex load impedance. Then remember that A square is a real number, but ZL will be there. So the answer has to be in complex domain. Yeah, here is that example, which is what I wanted to look at today, because we have not done this in the previous lectures. Suppose the load impedance is 8 minus J6 ohm. Okay. How do you repeat all these problems in that case? That is what was not done in the previous lectures. Problem 1 doesn't change because of that. Number of turns will not change just because load has changed. No issue with that. Problem 2 will get modified because now the load is not purely resistive. Instead, it is a complex load. So when you do even if it is lossless, the calculations will become now in complex domain because load is complex. So Vp divided by Vs or Ep divided by Es would still be the turns ratio, no issue with that. However, now Vs will be ZL into Is, and ZL is a complex number. So there will be a phase shift between Vs and Is. That is the difference that will be seen. Also, power calculations means now complex power will have to be calculated on both primary and secondary side using the well-known definition. And from there, we'll take the real part for consumed power and imaginary part as the reactive power. So with complex load, you can draw power triangle in transformers also on both primary and secondary side. Now let me get back to the actual solution to this problem. Yeah, transformation is fine. Here, EP and VP are 480 volt, and we have put 0 degrees to make it complex. And ES and VS will be obviously 1/4 because that was the turns ratio. Turns ratio was 4. Okay, and we will assume 0 degree phase shift when the transformation is happening. That means we are assuming dot convention where both the dots are on the top. That is what we assume by default. Now the load current, or rather secondary current if you want, will be Vs divided by ZL. And Vs is 120, 0. It's all RMS value. Divided by tan. Now 8 minus J6 has to be converted into polar form. So it would become tan with an angle of minus 36.87 degrees approximately. 10 ohm, of course. So the answer for IS is now 12 ampere with a phase shift of plus 36.87 degree amperes. You can convert it back into rectangular form. You get 9.6 plus J 7.2 amperes approximately. IP we know will be IS divided by A. So it will be the same value as IS but divided by a factor of 3. Oh, sorry, factor of 4. So you get 3 ampere with a phase angle 36.87 degrees. You can convert it into into rectangular domain to get the answer shown. Now, one thing very interesting to ask here is when we determine the AWG size of the wire required, do we consider real part of current or imaginary part of current? Actually, you consider the magnitude. That means square root of 2.4 square plus square root of 1.8 square, which is 3. So for calculating for recommending the AWG size for primary winding, you will use 3 ampere. And for secondary winding, you will use 12 ampere. Don't go by real part or imaginary part. It is the actual magnitude in polar form that matters. I'm being safer, basically. Now, power factor calculations are a must in this case. Power factor is simply cosine of the phase difference between voltage and current on primary side as well as on secondary side. And that difference happens to be 36.87 degrees on both primary and secondary. So cos of that is almost 0.8. So power factor is 0.8. Is it leading or lagging? Let's look at it carefully. Current actually has a plus phase angle. So current is leading in the secondary at least. So it's a leading power factor, I think. Now the complex power calculation on both primary and secondary side. On the primary side, 480 e to the power j 0 degrees multiplied by 3 into 3 with an angle of 36.87 degrees. Half is gone because we are assuming RMS values for 4 and 3. So the complex power on the primary side is 1440 e to the power minus j 36.87 degree VA. Oh yeah, complex conjugation is necessary in current. That's why minus sign has come in the angle. Get the real and imaginary parts of this. So primary complex power is 1152 watt minus j 864 VAR. That means 1152 minus j 864 VA approximately. So the consumed power in primary will be 1152 watts and the reactive power in primary will be minus 864 VAR. You can draw the power triangle. Yeah, it's drawn here actually. This is the power triangle on the primary side. On the secondary side also, similar story. You take the secondary voltage and secondary current, conjugate the secondary current, multiply. You will see that SS and SP happen to be the same because it's a lossless transformer. So the result for complex power is same on both primary and secondary side. If there were losses, these results would have been different. Now input impedance will also change. A square ZL. So A square into 8 minus J6. So input impedance will be a complex number, as you can see. EMF equations, we have already gone through this section, so I'm not going to waste your time. The important thing is to try to memorize these formulas, ES equal to 4.4429, or if you want square root of 2 into pi into F into NS into Bmax into A, and EP similarly is given by this equation, square root of 2 pi F NP Bmax A. We have done all this, okay? So nothing new here. Now, what else is there? Yeah, this also is simple enough. A single phase transformer has 1000 turns on the primary and 200 on the secondary. The maximum value of flux density in the core is 1.1 Tesla. That means 1.1 Weber per meter square. I think we have done it also. When 2200 volt, 50 hertz is applied to the primary. So everything is given. Your objective is to calculate the area of cross section. I think we have done this already in the past. So use this equation directly. Plug in all the numerical values. You should be able to get BM. Sorry, you should be able to get A. BM is given. 90 centimeters square approximately. Yeah, we have done this already. Next one. Yeah, doorbell question we have done already. I'm not going to spend time on it. This also source thing also we have done. Yeah. Okay. Dot convention. Now, a very interesting problem that we have yet not encountered. Try to read this if you can. The core of a two winding transformer. By the way, why the word two winding? Because there are times when you can have one primary and maybe three secondaries or two secondaries. Same primary can supply more than one secondary. There are transformers of that kind in real life. That's why this author is very carefully mentioning two winding transformer. That means only one primary and only one secondary. The case of a two winding transformer, as shown in figure A below, the core of a two winding transformer, as shown in figure A below, is subjected to a magnetic flux variation as indicated in figure B. There's no sinusoidal variation of flux here. That is the problem. Flux initially linearly rises, then it becomes flat, then it comes down linearly with time. Time is in seconds and flux is in Weber. So what do they want? Solution. But what is the problem? What is the induced EMF in the each winding? Now, when you see non-sinusoidal variation of flux, these famous equations simply will not apply. This one here. This entire thing, question 14 or 15, or even 12 and 13, they were based on the assumption that flux is varying sinusoidally. So these equations will not apply in that problem. Instead, we have to work using fundamental principles to figure out the voltages or EMFs. You will use Faraday's law, as simple as that. Primary has 200 turns and secondary has 500 turns. Okay, so it is step up transformer. Fine. Dot convention is shown. Both the dots are on top. So primary and secondary voltages are in phase, and currents are also, although they are not shown here. In fact, you don't need currents because they want only voltages in the answer. Flux, unfortunately, is not sinusoidal. That is the problem. Polarities are also shown. So what you will do is you will divide the problem into three different parts. For time between 0 and 0.06 second, flux will vary with time with the equation of a line, a straight line. In the second part, when time is between 0.06 and 0.1 second, flux will be constant to a value 0.009 Weber. And in the third part, again, another straight line equation will come to describe the behavior. So for three different parts, the voltages will have different behavior in both primary and secondary. d phi by dt will have different answers. In fact, in the middle part, d phi by dt will be 0 because phi is constant. So there will be no EP, there will be no V, no ES in the middle part. But in the beginning and at the end, there will be non-zero values. So what I did was, I took the first portion when t is between 0 and 0.06 second, and I figured the equation. It's very easy, right? At time equal to 0, flux is 0. At time equal to 0.06 second, the flux is 0.009. So you can calculate the slope of the line, right? So phi t should be 0.15 t Weber. That is the correct equation, I think, for first part. Okay. For second part, of course, it's constant, simply constant. Okay, no issue with that. For the third part, again, you have to work out the equation carefully. Basically, y equal to mx plus c, that type of description must be written, and then you have calculate the unknowns. Try doing it, because in the third portion, at small t equal to 0.1, phi is 0.009, and at small t equal to 0.12 second, phi is 0. These two conditions will determine the two arbitrary constants in the equation of the straight line that you want. So try doing it. Hopefully there's no mistake in my derivation here. This is the equation for phi t in the third portion. Once these three equations have been written, you write simply the Faraday's law. EAB, let's see how it is defined. Okay, it is defined like this, with plus at the bottom and minus at the top. This is given in the problem, so you cannot change it. So EAB equal to minus NAB d phi by dt. NAB means number of turns in the primary, which is given as 200. Okay. So in the first part, yeah, and okay, in the secondary side, on the secondary side, this is the equation: ECD equal to NCD d phi by dt, where NCD is, I think, 500. Wait 1 minute. I'm just checking the polarities for ECD. Yeah, they are with plus or on the top and minus at the bottom. Fine. So now you have to do differentiation for 3 different ranges of time in both cases, in primary as well as in secondary. And you can try doing it yourself. In the first part, you have, let's look at the primary voltage first, EAB or minus EBA, whatever you want. d phi by dt will be simply 0.15. So it will be constant with time. And that multiplied by number of turns, which is 200. So 200 into 0.15. And I guess I have put minus sign because I am using the minus value here. So 200 into 0.15 gives you 30. And minus sign is there because of the Faraday's law equation. So you get a flat line. EAB will have a constant value of negative 30 volt in the first range. Okay. In the second range, of course, it's 0 because d phi by dt is 0. No issue with that. In the third range, you have to differentiate this complicated equation that we got. This one with time. So 27 divided by 500 will not matter. It will be only minus 225 divided by 500. That would matter. And that should be multiplied by the number of turns, which is 500, I think, on the secondary side. Yeah. So do that. You get another constant behavior. And the value you can double check is plus 90 volt. It is the plus and minus are happening because of the polarities. Okay. The magnitudes are more important to us anyway. So this is what you will see as the EMF behavior in the primary side. It is like a square wave. You can do the same thing for secondary side also, and this is the answer that is expected. You can do it yourself. Okay? The only difference is polarities are defined in a different manner on the secondary side, as well as the number of turns, which is different on the secondary side. But d phi by dt is going to be the same in both cases. Because phi is same, it is linking both the coils. Okay, this one, let's see. Again, a simple one, it seems. An ideal transformer, that means it is lossless, has a 150 turn primary and a 750 turn secondary. So it is a step-up transformer. The primary is connected to a 240 volt 50 hertz source. Okay. There's no mention of the impedance of the source, so we will ignore it. The secondary winding supplies a load of 4 ampere. Sometimes load is specified in terms of secondary current. So we have to take it as it is. So the secondary current is 4 ampere at a lagging power factor of 0.8. They have given you the complex value of the secondary current. Determine the turns ratio, the current in the primary, the power supplied to the load, and the flux in the core. Okay. Part A is the simplest one. 150 divided by 750. Turns ratio is 0.2. No confusion about that. Secondary current's magnitude is 4 ampere. So primary current's magnitude will be 4 divided by A. So it is 20 amperes. At least the magnitude is known for you. Now power supplied to the load. On the secondary side, power is magnitude of Vs multiplied by magnitude of Is multiplied by cos of phi s, which is the power factor on the secondary side, which is given to you directly as 0.8. So you multiply. Vs is 240 volt Yeah. Just a minute. No, sorry. Primary is connected to 240 volt. Let me see what I'm doing. Yeah, 240, and it is a step-up transformer. So 240 multiplied by 5 will give me secondary voltage magnitude. Yes, so this is correct. Multiplied by magnitude of IS, which is 4, and multiplied by 0.8. So much of consumed power. I'm not calculating the reactive power here. They are not asking us anyway. That would have been magnitude of Vs multiplied by magnitude of Is multiplied by sine of phi s. So if cos of phi s is given, sine phi s can be calculated. Okay. And it's a lossless case. So Vp and Ep are same, and this is the formula. Using that formula with all the information given, it should be easy to figure out the maximum value of the flux in the core. Flux in the core, yeah, maximum value. This equation would help you in getting that answer. Number of turns in primary is given. EP or VP is also given. That's it. Everything is there except phi max. That makes the task very easy. Okay. Yeah, this is something we have done already. So it's a repetition of things. Condition for maximum efficiency is rederived here. Note on eddy current and hysteresis loss is there. Equations which we know are repeated in this document. Efficiency is output power upon input power. This is all done by us already. Condition for maximum efficiency is iron loss and copper loss should be approximately equal to each other. That is proven once again. Here actually I have included power factor also. That doesn't change the result though. All day efficiency, I have already told you a lot of things about it several times. It is the total energy output over a 24-hour period divided by total energy input over the same period. So let's look at a numerical example on all day efficiency. A 15 kVA, this is the rating, this is the apparent power, which is mentioned on the nameplate of the transformer. A 15 kVA, 2000 to 200 volt, that means primary voltage is 2000 volt, secondary voltage is 200 volt, recommended values at least. Transformer has an iron loss of 250 watt and full load copper loss of 350 watt. Look at the statement carefully. They have tested the transformer experimentally and are giving you total copper loss and total iron loss. Copper loss is at full load. Iron loss does not change much with the load anyway. During the day, Jasmine, during the full 24 hours, the transformer is loaded as follows. For 9 hours, the load is only 1/4 of the maximum. This is probably the night time. And power factor in that period is only 0.6. Bad, but so be it. For 7 hours, which is the peak time, I suppose, the transformer is working full load. That means full 15 kVA is being used. And power factor happens to be 0.8, slightly better. And then I guess evening time begins. So for 6 hours, the load goes down to 3/4 of full value and power factor improves even better. It goes to 1, perfect case. And then for 2 hours, it seems that nothing is connected to the transformer. Maybe transformer is down for maintenance in that period. Anyway, this is all given to you based on some real life scenario. So this is the loading on the transformer over a 24-hour period. Our job is to calculate the all-day efficiency. We have to consider each time zone separately and calculate total energy input and total energy output over that time zone. And then we sum up the results. TI is 250 watt, which is 0.25 kilowatt, not at all loads. Okay. Copper loss is 350 watt, which is 0.35 kilowatt at full load. So at 1/4 load, you know that copper loss is proportional to the square of the current. So at 1/4 load, the value will be 1/16 of the full load value, 1 by 4 into 1 by 4. So 350 divided by 16, which is about 21.875 watt. And at 3 by 4 load, which is another case given to us, it will be 3 square divided by 4 square multiplied by full load value, which is 350 watt. So you get 196.875 watt. It is not V, it is watt actually. Scanning is bad here. These values will be used now for energy calculations. Total loss is always copper loss plus iron loss. So at full load, the total loss will be 250 watt plus 350 watt. At 1/4 load, the total loss will be 250 watt plus 21.875 watt. At 3/4 load, the total loss will be 250 watt plus 196.875 watt. And at no load, no current is flowing, so copper loss is 0, only iron loss would survive. So at no load, the total loss is simply 250 watt. This is the philosophy you have to be aware of for making all day efficiency calculations. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I have done total copper loss for the entire period together. That also is possible, I suppose. I know that copper loss for no load period is 0. So 0 multiplied by 2, which is 0. Then copper loss for 3 by 4 load case is 196.875 watt. That multiplied by 6. Actually, you got to be careful. I'm calculating in kilowatt hour. So let me take all the losses in kilowatt rather than watts. So total copper loss, if you look carefully, for 9 hours, it is 1/4 load. So you will multiply 9 with the power value for 1 by 4 load, which is 0.021875 kilowatt. 9 into 0.021785 kilowatt hour. That is one time zone. The other time zone is 7 hours time zone. The next one. Here we have full load. So copper loss is full load value, which is 350 watts. So 350 into 7 and divided by 1000 because we are using kilowatt hour for energy calculations. And this is, by the way, copper loss in the energy sense, not in the wattage sense. We are calculating the energy loss due to copper because we are multiplying the wattage value by time. No. Then for 6 hours window, we have 3 by 4 load. So you will multiply 6 hours with 0.196875 kilowatt. Yeah. And you sum up the results. So total copper loss in the energy sense for the entire 24-hour, for 2 hours, there is no energy loss, not in the copper sense at least, because there is no copper loss at all. This last entry will not matter as far as copper loss is concerned. Only iron loss would come into picture. So we sum up the results. You get the total copper loss for this entire 24-hour period as 3.828125 kilowatt hour. Total iron loss is simple, 0.25 kilowatt multiplied by 24 hours. Right? Iron loss was given as 250 watt, right? Yeah. So 0.25 kilowatt multiplied by 24 because iron loss doesn't change with load. More or less, it is the same value. So total iron loss in this 24-hour period is 6 kilowatt hour of energy. Hence, the total energy loss will be 3.828125 plus 6 kilowatt hour. which gives you 9.828125 kilowatt. This is the total energy loss per day. Now, total energy output in this period is the next thing to do. You again go row by row. Look at the first case where load is 1/4. 9 hour one minute. The total energy output, total wattage coming out will be 15 kVA multiplied by power factor. In the 9-hour period, the output power, that is the secondary power, is rated kVA multiplied by power factor. So 15 into 0.6 kilowatt. Okay. And it also happens that in that 9-hour period, actually we are operating at 1/4 load, not the full load. So it would be 15 into 0.6 divided by 4. That will be the actual wattage coming out from the transformer. That is why I have written this here. 15 into 0.6 divided by 4 is the total wattage in the 9-hour period. And that multiplied by 9 gives me kilowatt hour. For the next row, we have 7 hours slot and 0.8 power factor. So 15 kVA multiplied by 0.8, and it's full load now. So no correction is required in that sense. 15 into 0.8 into 7. Okay. Full load, so no correction required here. You get this value. In the third line, we have got 6 hours case where load is 3/4. So 15 into 1, power factor is 1 now, which is nice. 15 into 1 into 3 by 4. And that multiplied by 6 will give you the total energy output. Total energy output in that 6-hour period. 6 into 15 into 3 by 4 into 1. Add up the results. The total energy output in the 24-hour period happens to be now 171.75 kilowatt. And total loss in that period is 9.828125 kilo. I know I'm being too accurate here. There's no need actually. 2 or 3 digits are enough. So total energy loss is known, total energy output is known. Add up the two, you get the total energy input over that period. Okay. Which works out to 181.57 something kilowatt. Now take the ratio of total energy output and total energy input and multiply by 100. Total energy input is 181.578 something. Total energy output is 171.75 kilowatt hour. The ratio of the two multiplied by 100 gives you 94.59%. So all day efficiency calculation is a little involved, and depending on where you look, you will see methodology slightly different, but philosophy behind the methodology is not changing. That's for sure. Even I change my method depending on how I'm feeling that day. So in some cases, I have done tabular calculations for each of the slots, each of the time slots, and then I have summed up the result. Here I have taken kind of loss and summed it up for the entire period systematically. We will see more problems on all-day efficiency in other documents also. Let me see if there is something new here. Some more solved problems. A single phase 250 kVA, 11 kV to 415 volt. This is real life. 11 kV is the primary voltage and it is stepping down to the substation value, which is 415 volt. A single phase 250 kVA, kVA is also given. 50 hertz frequency is also given. Number of turns on the primary is 80. So just 80 turns on the number of turns on the secondary is 80. Fine. Calculate the approximate value of the primary and secondary currents. The approximate number of primary turns, that's very easy, I think. And the maximum value of the flux. This is something which is slightly different from what we have done so far. So look at the solution carefully. Since power factor of the load is not given, nor is the primary power factor given, let us assume power factor equal to 1 throughout. That is lossless case. If nothing is mentioned about power factor, you assume it to be 1 by default. Now, primary current will be primary power divided by primary voltage, right? RMS values, of course. And power factor is 1, so we don't care anymore. Primary power at full load will be 250 kilowatt because power factor happens to be 1. And primary voltage is 11 kilovolt. Divide and you get primary current as 22.73 amperes approximately. Secondary current will be several ways of doing it, but you can go again to the philosophy of kVA. So 250 kVA divided by secondary voltage, which is 415 volts. So 250 into 10 to the power 3 divided by 415. So secondary current is 600.41 amperes, 602.41 amperes. Now turns ratio is easy to figure out. It's IS upon IP or VP upon VS, whichever way you want to do it. VP and VS are given anyway. So 11,000 divided by 415 is the turns ratio. It is around 26.5. So if you had done the same calculation using current values, then also you would get almost the same answer. And once this is all done, the last thing, of course, is to calculate the flux value, which for this, you again use the well-known equation, Vp equal to this, or you could use Vs equation also. It's up to you. So using that, you can calculate the flux, maximum flux in the core. Verify my calculations, please. 23.35 milliweber. More problems. The primary winding of a 50 hertz transformer has 400 turns and is fed from a 6400 volt supply. Determine the peak value of the flux in the core and the secondary voltage if the secondary winding has 20 turns. Okay. Again, the well-known equation is used in part A to figure out phi m. Everything is given here except phi m. F is given, NP is given, VP is given. Okay. 6400 volt is VP. 480 turns are there in the primary and frequency is 50 hertz. Put it all together. The peak value of flux in the core is around 0.06 Weber. Now, secondary voltage just a minute, 460, 400 be the secondary voltage if the secondary winding has 20 turns. Okay, that's very easy. If secondary winding has 20 turns, A is 480 divided by 20. Okay, which is 24. So Vs is very easy. It's Vp divided by A. Around 266.67 volts. That is the secondary voltage. So it's not a very difficult problem to tackle. More of the same type. A single phase 50 Hertz transformer has 80 turns on the primary winding and 400 turns on the secondary. The net cross sectional area of the core is 200 centimeters square. If the primary winding is connected to a 240 volt 50 Hertz supply, determine the EMF induced in the secondary winding and the maximum flux density in the core. I think it should be straightforward, not a big issue. We know this formula for secondary voltage. NP is given, NS is given, and VP is also given. So VS can be calculated. And once VS is calculated, put it back there. And area of cross section is given. So the flux density, BM, can be brought in. And check it out yourself. It is essentially a reasonably straightforward case. You have to figure out the secondary voltage and then use the EMF equation on the secondary voltage to figure out the flux density, because now area of cross section is given. So instead of phi m, we'll use Bm into A in the equation. Okay, there are some more here. Okay, this is also reasonably simple, I think. 10 kVA single phase transformer, primary connected to 2000 volt, 60 turns on the secondary side, and voltage across it is found to be 240 volts. That is on the secondary side. Assuming a lossless transformer, calculate the number of turns on the primary. Yeah, it should be simple. And the full load primary and secondary conversion. Yeah, that's just something I don't even want to go through very carefully because this is very straightforward. Basic equations, that's it. So you can look through it when you get the document. Next one. This may be a little more complicated. A 200 kVA, 3300 volt. By default, the volt value mentioned on the left side is always primary voltage. And that on the right side is always secondary voltage. That's the convention. So primary voltage is 3300 volts, secondary voltage is 240 volt. Frequency is given, single phase, 80 turns on the primary. Okay, this also, I believe, you should be able to go through the solution carefully and figure out what is going on. It's not a conceptually different problem compared to what we have done so far. Okay, straightforward application of the equations that we have designed so far. I'm rushing a little bit because there's a lot I want to tell you on the conceptual side also. So please go through this also carefully. I think there's no calculation mistake as far as I can see. There's one more set of problems, I think, including some theory. Yeah, this we have done already. I'm not going to. Yeah, this is almost done. Everything done there is here. So I will not waste your time on this. Yeah, forget. I think this one is almost. I'm just checking if there is anything new here. No, nothing new here. So I'll ignore this one completely. Let me move to the next set. Yeah, this one may have something new. These problems were done at various times, not today. So that's why you see duplicity quite a lot among them. Okay, let's read this one carefully. I think it's a simple one. I can feel it right away. The output voltage of a transformer falls from 230 volt at no load to 215 volt at full load. Okay, a magnitude, I suppose. Calculate the voltage regulation. Okay, very simple calculation. Full load means full rated current is being drawn from the secondary side. That is what full load means in a transformer. Voltage regulation, I've told you the definition already. No load voltage minus full load voltage divided by full load voltage and the entire thing multiplied by 100. Important thing is that in the denominator, you don't never put no load voltage, you put full load voltage. That is the way it is defined. So voltage regulation turns out to be 6.98%. Ideally, it should be zero, but in practice, it cannot be. So it's not that bad also. It's less than 10%, which is acceptable for most of the practical cases. Okay, simple illustrative example. Next one, the primary of a single phase transformer takes 1 ampere at power factor of 0.4 when connected to a 240 volt 50 hertz supply, and the secondary is open circuit. Okay, it's a very interesting case. Secondary is open, not connected at all. The primary still takes 1 ampere current at a power factor of 0.4. That is indicating that the core still needs energy to carry on, even if nothing is connected to the output of the transformer. This problem actually relates to that. So read it again. The primary of a single phase transformer takes 1 ampere at power factor of 0.4. Power factor of 0.4 means cos inverse of 0.4 is the phase angle between primary current and primary voltage. That is what it means. And they are not mentioning whether power factor is leading or lagging in the primary. So we don't know the uh, sign of that phase angle. I guess we don't need to. So the primary of a single phase transformer takes 1 ampere. This is only magnitude 1 ampere. There is a phase angle which will be cos inverse of 0.4 at a power factor of 0.4 when connected to a 240 volt 50 hertz supply. That is at the input, I suppose. And the secondary is an open circuit. Okay. The number of turns on the primary is twice that on the secondary. So A is 2. Okay. A load taking 50 ampere at a lagging power factor of 0.8 is now connected across the secondary. This is the second part. Now the first part is done. Now we connect a load on the secondary, and the load power factor is 0.8 lagging. Now what will happen? What is now the value of the primary current? That is the question. Neglect the voltage drops in the transformer. That means we will assume lossless cases in the windings. Windings will be assumed to have no losses, but core losses are there. They cannot be ignored. Let's see how we handle this. It's better to draw the equivalent circuit in such cases. Vp is the input voltage, Ip is the input current, Rp is zero because they have told us to assume that. XP is also 0, but the core has got its equivalent circuit which cannot be ignored. Core resistance is R0, magnetizing reactance is X0. And then some current will flow through the core, let's call it I0. The remaining IP minus I0, I'm calling it IP prime, will actually go through the ideal transformer which is shown. And 2-to-1 ratio is already given to us. The secondary also has 0 resistance and 0 reactance. And then we get secondary voltage Vs. Primary EMF is EP, secondary EMF is ES. We would assume dot convention as if both the dots are on the top by default. So with this equivalent circuit in front of you, in part 1, IS is 0. If IS is 0, IP prime will be 0. No current will be drawn by the so-called ideal transformer in the equivalent circuit. That means IP and I0 will be equal. This is called no load test. Actually, it's a practical method of figuring out iron losses or core losses. So no load connected means all the input current is actually supplying the core. That is what you're trying to put in the equation. IP equal to I0, which of course will be VP divided by the parallel combination, the impedance of the parallel combination of R0 and JX0, because RP and XP are 0 anyway. So this is the equation you will write for the first part. And VP is given as 240 volt. We will assume that it has 0 phase shift. We have to reference all the voltages and currents with respect to something. So let's assume that VP has 0 degree phase shift. Everything else is having phase shift with reference to VP. And Z0 is simply JX0 into R0 divided by R0 plus JX0, right? Parallel combination of the two impedances. So value of I0 is also given to you as 1 ampere with a phase shift of cos inverse 0.4. And I'm assuming minus value by default, because that is generally the truth. Not that it matters much, but I'm putting minus sign. Okay, so I0 is 1 ampere with an angle of minus phi naught, and phi naught is cos inverse of 0.4. Plugging in all that, and before that, let me calculate the Z0 formula more in detail. Z0 works out to be having magnitude given by this much. Z0 is the impedance of the parallel path. Okay. And the phase angle of Z0 is given by this equation. We have been given cos phi naught equal to 0.4. Right. So cos of tan inverse of X0 upon R0 equal to 0.4. Or if you want, you can calculate tan phi naught and use equation 6 from there. So you get one equation. See, your objective is to figure out the values of R0 and X0. No load test is designed to help you in experimentally figuring out the equivalent circuit parameters R0 and X0. That's what we are trying to do here. So one equation is derived from the fact that cos phi naught is given. From there you calculate tan phi naught, and tan phi naught should be X0 divided by R0. So X0 should be 2.2911 R0, because tan phi naught is 2.291. That's one equation. The other equation is the magnitude of Z0 is given by this equation, right? And we have written this equation here. 240 divided by magnitude of Z0 should give you the magnitude of IP, which is, I think, 1 ampere, right? Yeah, 1 ampere. So that gives you the second equation. Or you can directly write the value of impedance Z naught and its magnitude, which is given as equation 5. Okay. Magnitude of Z naught should be this in terms of R naught and X naught. And we also know that magnitude of Z naught will be 240 divided by magnitude of IP. And magnitude of IP is 1 ampere. So magnitude of Z naught is 240 ohm. So that way you can write another equation, which is written here. So we have got two equations, equation 10 and 11 to solve and figure out X naught and R naught. That's what I tried to do next. I think I made some mistakes, but then I corrected myself. Hopefully there is no continuing mistake. So I got R naught equal to 261.87 ohm approximately and X naught equal to 599.97 ohm approximately. You can always convert that X naught into equivalent inductance values by using X naught equal to 2 pi f L naught. So two equivalent circuit parameters concerning the core at least are known doing this experiment. Of course, we have assumed that windings have zero losses in the process. So that's part one. X naught and R naught have been calculated. Now okay, I've written it also. This is the well-known no-load test used to determine the transformer's core equivalent circuit parameters experimentally. Yeah, this is no-load test. Now, the second part is when you actually connect a load of some value. What is the value given? Yeah, the load now is 50 ampere current with 0.8 power factor lagging. So cos inverse of 0.8 and with a minus sign. That will be the phase angle of 50 ampere current. IS will be 50 ampere with an angle of minus cos inverse 0.8. So what should be the primary current in that case? That's the question. So you'll have to reuse the equivalent circuit with known R0 and X0 values that part one helped you in figuring out. In part two, I0 is 50 into minus cos inverse of 0.8, which works out to 40 minus J30 amperes almost. And A is NP by NS, that's for sure. So this current IP prime will be related to IS by A, which is done here, IS upon A. So 20 minus J, 15 amperes. Now, other thing is that I0 value is needed now. To get the total primary input current, you need to sum up IP prime and I0. But we know that I0 will not change even if the transformer is loaded. It will remain more or less the same. So part A should be able to help us calculate I0 also. I0 does not change with load and is still equal to whatever was the value. Cos inverse of 0.4, I think is 66.42 degrees. And I assumed minus sign there. So I0 is already known from part one. Okay. In rectangular form, the value is 0.4 minus J 0.9165 amperes. So you add up IP prime and I0 to get the total primary current at the load which is connected now. This is the use of equivalent circuit. It makes calculations more realistic. If you had ignored I0, that means you had not bothered about core losses, this issue would not have arisen at all. IP and IP prime would have been equal. Not a big issue then. But reality is that core matters, especially when you load things, core's effect cannot be ignored. Even when you don't load, core is important, but in that case, you don't care much anyway, because no power is being drawn. So, okay, so that's what I've done at the end to total the two and get the total primary current IP. Yeah. And that's what I got. 25.88 amperes with an angle of minus 37.96. Okay, next one, let's see. Hopefully it's not that complicated. Single phase 50 hertz transformer has 100 turns on the primary. Okay, yeah, this should be simple, I think. Yeah, this is straightforward. Let me not even bother about it. You should be able to do it very easily. Next one. In a 50 kVA, 11 kV to 400 volts single phase transformer, the iron and copper losses are given to you. Okay. That's a very interesting question. Under rated conditions, calculate the efficiency at unity power factor at full load. And part 2, the load for maximum efficiency. And part 3, the iron and copper losses for this load. Calculations are not difficult. You just have to think carefully here. What is given? KVA is given, primary voltage is given, secondary voltage is given, copper losses and iron losses are given. Copper losses are, I think, full load copper losses, and iron loss is anyway independent of load. So we don't care. Now, in part 1, the efficiency at unity power factor at full load. Unity power factor at full load. That means output current is 50 kVA divided by 400 volt, because unity power factor is involved. So 50 kVA, 50,000 VA divided by 400 V. That should be the output current. Anyway, before that, I have made loss calculations. Iron loss is 500 watt, copper loss full load is 600 watt. So the total loss at full load is 1100 watt, right? That's not an issue. It's very easy to figure out. P input, assuming unity power factor, will be simply 50 kW at full load. Okay. P output, okay, that is the right thing to do, I suppose. P input is 50 kilowatt, no question about that. P loss is 1100 watt. So P out will be 50 kilowatt minus 1100 watt. That is the right thing to do, I think, to get the power directly. Output power is input power minus loss power. 48,900 watt. Then take the ratio of the two powers to get the efficiency. Rest is simple. So please look at this problem carefully. It involves a bit of thinking. Otherwise, you may not get to the answer directly. Now, second part says the load for maximum efficiency. Maximum efficiency means iron loss and copper loss have to be equal, right? When would that be? That means copper loss should come down to 500 watt. Iron loss doesn't change anyway. So at what load will copper loss come down to 600 watt? That's the question. Total loss will be 1000 watt when efficiency is maximum, because copper loss will also be 500 watt, right? So output power will be P in minus 1000 watt. But problem is that copper loss has gone down to 500 watt. Hence, both IP and IS will drop by a factor of square root of 5 by 6. Because if copper loss has gone down by a factor of 6 by 5, or rather by a factor of 5 to 6, the currents have to drop by a factor of square root of that. So the new kVA will be the original kVA, which is 50, I think. 1 minute. Yeah, 50 multiplied by this correction factor. Voltages don't change. It is the current that matters when it comes to load. So the new kVA is 45.64. And at this load, iron and copper losses will be equal to each other. And they both will be 500. You can divide this 45.64 by the secondary voltage to get the secondary current at this condition of maximum efficiency. Okay, this is simple again, I think. Yeah, not an issue at all. The EMF per turn for a single phase 2200 220 volt 50 hertz transformer is approximately 12 volt. So basically, it's even simpler. You know that EMFs are proportional to the number of turns. In the equation, it's clear. So if EMF per turn is given, you simply take that value and divide the voltage by that value to get the number of turns. No need to think too much. Per turn is 12 volt. So to get 2200 volt, how many turns would I need? 2200 divided by 12. And to get to 220 volt, how many turns would I need? 220 divided by 12. That's it. Done. Sometimes these are the kind of questions you see in GATE exam and other competitive exams also. A transformer on no load has a core loss of 50 watt and flows a current of 2 ampere RMS. It has an induced EMF of 230 volt RMS. Neglect winding resistance and leakage flux and calculate the no load power factor, core loss current, and magnetizing current. A little bit involved. Maybe I'll leave it for now. I'll come back to it if time permits. Next one. 25 kVA transformer has 500 turns on the primary and 50 turns on the secondary. So A is 10. The primary is connected to 3000 volt 50 hertz. Calculate the current ratings for primary and secondary. Oh, this should be easy. The EMF induced. This should be easy also. Oh yeah, this is straightforward. KVA is given. Both the voltages are given. It should be very easy to figure out the currents. Solution is given right here. This problem is quite simple. And maximum flux density, etc., can also be figured out based on the standard equation. So I don't see any problem in understanding the solution. Next one. Is there any trick here? No, this also seems to be simple enough. Permutation and combination of the equations that we have derived. Problem 8 is not that difficult, I think. Yeah, straightforward. So this you should be able to do. I'm trying to get to tougher ones. Okay, this one is also not too difficult, I think. Straight calculations. KVA divided by primary voltage will give you maximum or full load primary current, magnitude at least. KVA divided by secondary voltage will give you full load secondary current. That is one thing you should always keep in mind when doing these elementary calculations that even mechanical engineers can do very well. Okay. This also, I believe, if you read it carefully, you should be able to figure it out. Okay. Yeah, nothing special about. Yeah, this is one thing I wanted to show you very carefully. All day efficiency explained to you by somebody else. I don't know who the author is, but read this carefully. The ordinary or commercial efficiency of a transformer is defined as the ratio of output power to the input power. We know this. This is called, he's calling it commercial efficiency. Fine. I call it power efficiency. Not a big issue. There are certain types of transformers whose performance cannot be judged by the efficiency, by this efficiency. I mean. For instance, distribution transformers used for supplying lighting loads have their primaries. I know we are running out of time, so after this I'll stop. Have their primaries energized all the 24 hours in a day, but the secondaries supply little or no load during the major portion of the day. It means that a constant loss, that is iron loss, occurs during the whole day, but copper loss occurs only when the transformer is loaded. And copper loss would depend upon the magnitude of the load. That means magnitude of the secondary and primary currents. Consequently, the copper loss varies considerably during the day, and the commercial efficiency of such transformers will vary from a very low value or even zero to a high value when the load is high. Load means load current, secondary current. Or load sometimes may also mean the power, output power, but by default, let's say current. The performance of such transformers is judged on the basis of energy consumption during the whole day. This is known as all day efficiency or energy efficiency. The ratio of output in kilowatt hour to the input in kilowatt hour of a transformer over a 24-hour period is known as all day efficient. That is exactly what I told you. Okay. It is of special importance for those transformers whose primaries are never open circuited, but the secondaries carry little or no load much of the time during the day. In the design of such transformers, efforts should be made to reduce the iron losses because they matter more. Okay. And then there is solve problem. He has done it slightly differently from what I would use, but you can either follow his solution carefully or try to do it yourself. The answer will not change. Method could be different, but the actual answers that you'll get should be the same. In this case, he got 97.73%. Let's see what loading he was using. His transformer for 6 hours, it is drawing 300 kilowatt at 0.8 power factor. For 10 hours, it is drawing 200 kilowatt at 0.7 power factor. For 4 hours, it is drawing 100 kilowatt at 0.9 power factor. And for remaining 4 hours, zero output. And KVA is given as 400. Iron loss is also given to you, which of course you need. And copper loss at full load is also given. Yeah, we need all that. Okay. So try to follow this example. Or if you don't follow his method, try to do it yourself. Break up the problem into 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different slots. For each slot, total losses, total energy loss, and total energy output has to be calculated. And then you sum up the results to get the total energy loss over the entire 24-hour period and total energy output over the same period. Then you add up the two to get the total energy input over the same period. And then you have to take the ratio of the total energy output to the total energy input. Okay. If you have difficulty with this, you can always come back to me offline. Okay, this is one more. I don't think we have time to go for it. It's a simple one anyway. It's not a big issue. So go through it yourself. Another simple problem to calculate the power efficiency, not all-day efficiency. And voltage regulation also. Try to understand this problem. It's a lossless case, so it should be simple to understand. No, sorry, it's not a lossless case. RP and RS are given, but windings inductances are negligible. Try to read it, and if you have difficulty understanding the solution, I'll help you out later.